where are you standing with Devers being pissed? What do you think about the idea that this upsets him?
So I'm not surprised. I mean, every player gets territorial about his position. I don't think he has a choice at the end of the day. I think that's really it. So he can be as pissed as he wants to be, but the bottom line is if he wants to play, he's going to have to move positions. Either that or he sits in the dugout and watches. There's always the chance that he will pout and sulk. Come up with a fake injury the way Manny Ramirez used to do, things like that. But I don't think that's really who Devers is. I think he's, at the end of the day, I think he's a pretty good-natured guy who wants to hit. And the fact of the matter is, a year ago, he sat in the very same spot and spouted on and on about how the Red Sox didn't have the pitching and he wants a better team and he wants to be able to compete. And I'm paraphrasing here. But then a year later, they go out and get some pitching, they get some better defense, and now it's, well, I don't want to move my position. So do you want to win or don't you? And I think at the end of the day, he's not going to have a choice. He's going to have to move, but clearly he's being stubborn about that.
Do you think there's a chance that he goes away, like he just went away last weekend, but he goes away again and waits a few days and calms down and understands that this is a way to make the team better and make them win?
Yeah, John, I think that the Red Sox already tried to do that. My guess is that's why they told him before he left camp. So now, look, the question, and he left camp, what was that? Not this past Friday, the one before. So, to me, I wonder if the only question is whether or not the Red Sox told him he got pissed and left camp, or he said he was going home for his daughter's birthday and he was leaving, and they told him because they knew he'd be away for a few days, and it was a good way to let him sort of get it out of his system before he came back. If that's what they were planning, he didn't get it out of his system. So, look, it might take him a little while to get over this, but I keep coming back to the same thing. What are his options? If Christian Campbell can play second base, Bregman's going to play third, and if Devers wants to be in the lineup, it's going to have to be as a DH or a first baseman. Fact, end of story. And I don't think that they want to trade him. I don't think they can trade him and get equal value because of his salary. Who's going to want a $30 million DH? I just think that he's kind of stuck. They're a little stuck. And if they all want it, if they all want him to play, it's going to have to be somewhere other than third base. But again, the question that's sort of the linchpin of that whole thing is whether Campbell can play second. If Campbell can play second, the decision's made.
All right, so they had to know by getting Bregman that this was gonna be a possibility. So do you
definitely
think? Yeah, and obviously with the distressed asset and everything, you're not going to get a lot back in terms of return on your trade. But do you think the team they've had to have known this was a possibility? Do you think the team has thought about the possibility of trading Devers and is ultimately comfortable with if that ends up happening?
I think they've thought about it. My guess is they don't want to do it, and they don't think it's going to be necessary. So, it's a hard one to say, are they comfortable to do it? If the guy holds out and doesn't want to play, if it gets that bad, which, again, I don't think it's going to, Fred, I think Devers kind of flaps his gums, and then, it's, well, what are my choices? And your choices are to play, and then he's going to play. So, I don't think they want to trade him. I don't think it's going to get that far, but is it possible they've poked around? I guess. I mean, sure. I just don't know who would, the real criticism of the Red Sox on this one to me is you signed this guy to a $300 million contract a couple of years ago. He's got the biggest contract in the history of the team. And then you decided within 2 years that he can't play third base, so you gave him all that money as a DH? And that's a stupid business decision if that's the case. So I think they mismanaged his contract, and then they've been trying to keep the payroll down. Well, what'd you give a DH $30 million for? So to me, that's where the Red Sox take the heat. But now they're here 2 years later, and they're trying to get better. Again, if Campbell can play second, the best team they can put on the field is with Devers as DH.
And that's the thing is that if you trade for Devers, you're going to play him at third base, and you're going to compensate the Red Sox like he's a DH. But the thing is that it is interesting because if I'm Devers, I'm pissed off because, I'm the highest paid. I go into the offseason the highest paid player on the team. I look at myself probably as the de facto leader of the team. Then you go out in all the free agents and all the trades that you could have made. You take a guy that plays you sign a guy that plays my position, and then I go into camp and you're telling me that you're going to make me a DH. I mean, I understand the frustration of Devers. Now, it doesn't mean that he's getting paid a lot of money, and it doesn't mean that he shouldn't do what's best for the team. But I understand him being pissed off. I mean, that would piss me off.
As long as he works his way through it quickly, or relatively quickly, that's fine. But if he pouts and holds out and comes up with phantom
all
injuries,
I'm saying is that there's a lot of positions that you could have filled. There's a lot of things you could have done, and you signed a guy to directly the one guy that would really directly piss off your best player.
One other thing, Maz, you were mentioning.
Well, let Maz expand.
Oh, okay, go right ahead.
Jesus
first.
Christ, you interrupted me.
Go ahead, Maz.
Fred,
My
the
mistake.
Answer to that is yes, and I know fans get pissed off about it, but the fact of the matter is, most everybody in any job in any walk of life that has some level of professional pride and ambition sits there and says, well, look, like Devers says, I'm a third baseman. I'm one of the best third basemen in the league. You're going to compensate me for that. The Red Sox say yes. They give him $30 million. Then 2 years later, they say, oh, okay, we're going to take away the stage. So you're still going to get the same money, but you're only, you're not going to play at the position that you signed up to play for. And he takes some level of pride in that, and he's territorial about it. So, look, Derek Jeter didn't want to move off a shortstop. Cal Ripken didn't want to move off a shortstop. The Red Sox could have signed, and these are all sort of things that you were alluding to, the Red Sox could have signed Teoscar Hernandez as a right-handed hitter, put him in left field, and that would have been fine. And Jaron Duran would have had to move, or William Abreu would have to move, or, whatever. So they had all types of options, and I think at the end of the day, they whiffed on all these other guys, and Bregman was all that was left. So they decided, well, this is what we're going to do. Now, again, you can blame the Red Sox for some of that, and I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. The irony of this whole thing, to answer your question, does Devers have a right to be pissed? Of course. Yeah, sure. Anybody has a right to get mad about anything if they feel they've been slighted. He's just going to have to make a choice at some point because I don't think they're going to budge. And the other thing, Fred, is Bregman's contract, let's not forget, is basically a series of one-year deals.
Right.
If Bregman has a big year, at the end of the year, he opts out, and then what? They're going to move Devers back to third base?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So, the Red Sox have kind of created this sort of unstable situation there a little bit by giving Devers the contract, then going out and getting another guy who could play the position. And all of it stems from, there's a lot of that comes out of this. One is this is all a spin-off of Mookie Betts and the deterioration of the organization.
Which is why they gave Devers the contract in the first place.
Bingo.
The PR was not good around this team, so they were like, okay, we have one young superstar left. We got to sign this guy. How much money does he want? $300 million? No problem. It's worth it's worth the PR we're going to get to sign him. So I don't think they were thinking about 5 days in the future, let alone 2 years in the future when they signed him to that contract. They just needed a young star and put him in there and put him out there every day.
John, that's basically it. Again, it's amazing how that Betts decision is still hanging over their head and affecting them in some ways. And look, I am one of those people who believes that Mookie Betts did not want to stay here, that they sensed he was never really engaging with them. They were always a step behind. So they would get to $200 million and Mookie Betts was at $300 million. They would get to $290 and he was at $350. And when they were at $100, he was at $200. So they were always a year behind the negotiation. But I don't know if I think that was as much him saying, well, okay, thanks for coming back, but the price has now gone up. In other words, they were playing like this ridiculous cat and mouse game. So at the end of the day, I'm not sure either side wanted the other one. But because of that, there's been this whole chain reaction, and they're running around chasing their tail, and they've been mediocre for 6 years, which in Red Sox standards sucks. They should not be a 500 team. and they should, let alone for 6 years. So, they spent all this time the other day when they introduced Bregman, talking about how Bregman chose the Red Sox, and both Sam Kennedy and I almost said Chaim Bloom, Craig Breslow said this, that, well, we're grateful he chose Boston. That means a lot to us. We take pride in that. What they're trying to say is that someone finally picked us after people have been turning on their back on us for 6 years because we couldn't get anyone to come here, including, by the way, a GM, because Craig Breslow was like the 10th guy on their list. So they are scraping to still get people to come here. They traded for Crochet. Walker Buehler's on a 1-year deal. So they had to do something a little desperate to try to win. So they gave Bregman a unique contract.
Mas,
right.
can I just real quick? I just wanted to ask, because Fred brought this up earlier today, that this idea that Chaim or somebody else told Devers when he signed this deal, like, you're going to be our third baseman through the entirety of the deal. Do you believe that, number one? And were you surprised at all that Cora was as absolute about his answer yesterday and saying, well, Chaim's in St. Louis now?
So this is my favorite part of the whole thing, Ryan. Like, the whole thing was comical. First of all, nobody is guaranteed anything when they sign a long contract.
Right.
Okay, it's like, this is where we're going to play you now, and we'll see where we are in 5 years. Now, is it possible that Chaim Bloom said to Devers, "Hey, look, we envision you as our third baseman of the future"? Sure, but stuff changes. So, that's not in writing, and I can't remember a contract in baseball history where any player in the contract was guaranteed of being in a position for any length of time. So, that's sort of out the window. I do find it comical that Cora would then say, hey, Chaim Bloom's in St. Louis. Chaim Bloom's been gone for 2 years, and they're still blaming crap on him. So, I think I think Cora got agitated at the person asking the question as much as the question, and I don't even know who asked it, but when I was watching it this morning, his tone seemed to change when the question came from that person, but it was a total shot at Bloom, and it was sort of a message. I think, Cora to me was relaying what we've talked about at the beginning of this call, which was, hey, you sat there a year ago, you bitched about the pitching staff, you said we weren't good enough and you expected to compete. Now we've gone out and gotten people to compete, and you're bitching that you have to sacrifice in order for us to win. And I sort of side with Cora on that one, and I think at the end of the day, Devers has no choice but to get past this.
All right. Well, look, Tony, it's great fortune for everyone, as there is controversy with the Red Sox, and that means there's something to talk about. So that's
controversy.
Always good.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Red Sox analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.